Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to another edition of WOWSA Live with a special guest and our host, Ned Denison, calling in from Cork, Ireland. Ned?
Hello, everyone. In addition to everything else, I was born and grew up in the state of Vermont, so I've got a connection with Charlotte going back certainly more than 15 years. I'm currently the chairman of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame and have trained and competed with Charlotte several times over the years. I'm going to ask Charlotte to give an overview of her open water career, if you will, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ned. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte, and I'm coming to you from Stowe, Vermont, at the swimming hole where I've been working for the last 20 years as executive director. Over the last 10 years, I've swum 55 marathons. I've had 9 DNFs. I've had 2 ice miles, and some of the swims are epic and some of them are a little bit more unknown. I grew up in New Zealand, pretty close to the beach, and I was very fortunate as a wee kid that the town where I grew up in built a 50-meter 8-lane Olympic-sized outdoor pool right alongside the beach. So I had a pretty nice playground growing up. I am a personal trainer. I got certified in swim instruction and swim coaching in 1986, so I've been teaching and coaching quite a long time. And that's pretty much my gig. I just really enjoy the water inside the pool and outside in the open water.
So you've been involved with Phil White over the years in turning Vermont into a hotbed of marathon and ice swimming. Talk to us about some of the early history, some of the events, and if you don't mention it, I'll mention the number of times you won those various things.
You bet. So in 2009, I got a call came into my office from someone I've never heard his name, and his name was Phil White. I've heard it quite a few times since then, and he was looking for a little bit of help with the growing age group open water swimming generally and in Vermont. And being a certified age group coach, he asked for me to just give him some help on encouraging kids, actually, and adults to get into the open water. So I sort of came and participated with his first Kingdom swim in 2009, and it was a big success. And since then, he's been, I call him the Pied Piper of open water swimming. He has a pretty infectious way of gathering people into the water, starting at a very low entry level of distance and then building them up to swimming longer. So he's really built up some tremendous numbers in Vermont and really transitioned people to the outdoors.
You've been a big part of that transition, but how many big swims does he have in those lakes? And tell us a little bit about the Winter Festival of the Ice.
Okay, so we'll start off with his with the lake swims. He has his big opening swim of the year is called Son of a Swim, and it essentially grew from the need for qualifying swims for people to get prepared for his July larger Kingdom swim. So there's offered a 1, 3, a 6, and a 10 mile, and it's swum up around some islands close to the Canadian border, and that's early in the season in June. And then in the Kingdom swim, super fun, big day of swimming with a 1 mile, 3 mile, 6 mile, 10 mile. And then much of the swims have really evolved out of the need for someone to do training for a bigger stepping stone swim. So the Border Buster, which is a 25K, really grew out of someone's need to do a longer training swim for the English Channel. So now that's become a really popular swim with upwards of 35 people swimming it. And it's the big appeal of the Border Buster is you're going from one country to another. I mean, what's better than that? You're starting in the USA, you're swimming across the border, you see the border boys, and you're like, you're in Canada. It's like, you're a winner, regardless. You're crossing that, and then you get to come back again. And Phil really did a lot of work to work with the immigration officials to even allow this to happen. And certainly a number of my swims up there where I've been perhaps pretty close to the border, maybe a little bit over, and it's not unusual to see a boat or a helicopter sort of coming to check out what you're doing, you know. And so it's pretty adventurous, magical stuff. So that's the Kingdom Swim, which is traditionally in July. He's going to his 11th year. Unfortunately, this year it is going to be postponed till next year. And then there grew a week of swimming, which is super fun. It's hitting the Vermont lakes, a different lake each day. And the lakes in Vermont, part of the appeal for them is they're quite quiet. They vary in length. They're very pretty green mountain surroundings. It's not unusual to see an eagle, different other wildlife out there. And so there's 8 days of wonderful swims, and not unlike your Cork camp. It's so tremendous in training to have consecutive days of swimming where you're gassing yourself. And then the next day you get up and you do it again, and you get your brain past thinking, I can only swim one day hard, because that's not true. You can actually train your mind and get your body ready to have a bit of a rest overnight, recharge, and then you're back out at it again. And I think that week of swimming really helps people get that reinforcement that they can stretch their bodies further than they think. And the Kingdom Swim is a nice friendly way to do that. It's pretty relaxed. You know, there's not big prizes up for stakes. It's kind of, you know, bragging rights that you did so many days in a row.
You didn't think taking my scalp the last time was a big prize?
Oh, I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I was going to do in my intro, I've been fortunate. I mean, all swimmers have their strengths and weaknesses, and I've certainly got my weaknesses. And one of my big hurdles is I'm quite a lean swimmer. Part of it's genetics, and the other thing is I really have a challenge sitting still. And for anyone who's been joining my at-home workouts, you get a bit of a taste of that. So when I go into a marathon swim in cold water, I'm dealing with 15 to maybe 18, 19% body fat tops. So, you know, that's certainly a challenge for me, but you know, there's other things that you can do to make up, and certainly that, you know, high conditioning and getting out and doing some cold water swimming in Vermont helps, and brings me into the ice swimming in Vermont, because you know, hell freezes over and so does Vermont, and it happens every year. And when you enjoy open water swimming, you start to want to maximize the season as long as you can. And, you know, that's what certainly myself and some others have done. Phil White went one step further by not only offering swims when the water got very cold, but when it froze over, out came the saw, and he cut a 25-meter two-lane pool out of Lake Nymphomagog, and now we have a winter swim competition, which I think 80, 90 people this year traveling from around the world and around the US to come and compete in the winter swimming. So that's a pretty memorable event as well.
For people wondering about ice and saws, 100 years ago, Vermonters used to sell a lot of big blocks of ice to people in New York and Boston. So it's no problem to find some old farmer in Vermont with an ice cutting saw. So Phil just found a couple of his buddies and laid on this event. Charlotte, the swim that I'm most jealous of is your victory in Atlantic City, one of the big epic swims of all times, big in the late 50s. Tell us about your experience down there, how it felt, what the visuals were like on that swim.
That was such a fun swim. I loved it. It was super exciting. There was a couple of really special things for me. Is one, I had my dad with me, and he hadn't watched me race for 25 years. He's a bit of a character. He's 87 years old. He's a little ripper. And so I had him with me, which was really cool. We drove down from Vermont. I think it was about a 7 or 8 hour drive. Arrived into Atlantic City, and the first thing that struck me is, you know, what a place to be racing with all these massive casinos and boardwalks. And anytime I swim, I really like to find out a little bit about the area and the history, and I like the landmarks. So rather than looking at border markings in Lake Memphremagog, I'm looking at, you know, the Tropicana or the big Ferris wheel as being my landmarks. So we cruised along to the race meeting. It was really well organized, super nice people, and I felt really conditioned and ready to go. And waved goodbye to my dad. This is one of the first swims actually that I've ever worn a toe float in. It was mandatory. So one thing I learnt right at the start was there was a line drop for the start. Well, note to self, don't have your float on the back side of the line drop, because when you go to take off, everyone else is left. So those things you learn by doing. So one of the things that appealed to me about this race is the history of it. Now, the support boat was a full-on lifeguard boat with 2 lifeguards and your crew. I mean, how cool is that? Not only me having to work swimming, these guys were hauling this thing. It was really, really fun.
I have to interrupt you for a second. Yeah. The famous swimmer Marilyn Belle, she competed in Atlantic City after crossing Lake Ontario. She fell in love with one of those lifeguards, married him, and had 4 children. So those lifeboats are really dangerous down there, Charlotte. I'll warn you now.
I tell you, those guys got more attractive every hour. So what are you looking at? Oh, they were great. They were fantastic. So off we go. Now, there's quite a lot of clearance you need for the pulling oars on those things. So I'm swimming quite wide off this boat. And one of the hazards I discovered quite early on is there's quite a lot of boat ramps and docks that actually have been washed away or aren't there anymore, but their pylons are there. So within the first 30 minutes, I'm coming to take I've got a pretty predominant right arm, straight arm recovery. So I'm flying my arm up and over. And, you know, I'm looking at the guys on the boat. I'm pretty sure they're waving, going, hey, you're doing great. But they were doing this. Well, I smack the back of my hand so hard on one of these. And I got to say, the first thought was, beep, that hurt. But of course, being trained not to stop after being to Cork, I kept swimming and I come up for my first feed and it's gashed pretty good. And I'm like, oh, it's going to hurt. And I didn't find out until 2 or 3 days later that my hand was now the shape of a foot, that I'd broken it and swam the rest of the swim with a broken arm. True to form. Anyway, so the swim was a lot more challenging than I thought. Around the islands, there's 2 essentially inlets to get on the back side of the boardwalk, and they were quite a lot more turbulent than I thought they would be. It was quite hard swimming. I loved the swim along I think it's 11 or 12 miles along the boardwalk. It's just tremendous. You're essentially people watching the whole way down this thing. Super, super fun. And yeah, but it was a great race. And then I think the highlight for me was coming into the finish, and I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but the finish seemed to take quite a long time to get there over the last hour. And finally, I recognized the building, and I came around, and here's my 87-year-old dad. His smile was worth, oh, I would have swum it twice for that. It was incredible. So I haul myself up the steps, and I got, blood's now dragging down my leg. And the guy comes up and says, oh, well, congratulations, you're the first female in. And I said, oh, look, no, I think you better check your watch. I don't think you're correct. No, you're the first one to come in. And I'm like, I think you might have a mistake. I actually didn't believe it, to be honest with you. So it was a nice surprise.
I'm going to change the topic on you, and you've earned admiration from the marathon community for picking yourself up off your backside and keep going. Tell us about your quest for the Triple Crown. Start with the first of each of them, and don't leave out any friends you might have met in Catalina along the way.
Okay, for sure. So I don't know if there's many more of Nearly's. That is nearly getting there. So in 2012, I went for an attempt of the English Channel and was pulled with hypothermia. And it was a hurt, put the hurt on me mentally, definitely. And I came out of that, pretty gutted, and picked myself up eventually, dusted myself off, licked my wounds, and was, can't remember the exact day it was, but I got up and put my pants on like everyone else and said, well, I think I'm going to get out there and have another crack at things. I'm going to do some stuff to get me even better prepared for next time. So I had a little search around and read up about the Manhattan Island Marathon. And I'm like, there we go, straight back into training, and went through areas where I can improve on what I'd done before. Got myself entered into Manhattan and got in, which I was thrilled about. And worked on my cold water training. When I came out of the English Channel, someone that might be listening now said to me, you know, Charlotte, there are warmer swims out there. And so I turned around and did an eye smile and ramped up my cold water training, and I got myself ready for Manhattan. I'm like, I'm gonna get this. So 2013 was the year, and it was an early scheduled swim. I had all my training done, and I flew down to New York City, and I went and attended the race meeting, all excited because I knew this water was going to be potentially a little bit warmer than the channel. I'd had a successful qualifying swim. Well, I went into the meeting, and there were so many people there I'd heard about. I was in awe. Irish folks were there, Aussies were there, the odd Kiwi was there, and there was me, a little underdog. And so I sat there, and the race director said, well, there's been a few developments. We've got a tropical storm coming in. There's a couple of things that you need to know. Number one is the New York sewer system can back up with more than 1.5 inches of rain in an hour. And I was like, swimming in shit, I can do that, no problem. Number two, we don't have enough boats, and some swimmers are sharing. I don't mind sharing, I'll be all good. Number three, the water is unseasonably cold, and this is the first year that we've ever had the water temperature currently colder than the qualifying swim. I was like, oh crap. So I went to bed positive, ready to get up and go, and here came the morning. MIMS 2013, super excited. We get down to the dock. We're waiting around for everyone's boats to show up. Not everyone's boats make it, so quite a lot of swimmers are sharing. We get off in the swim. My boat, little thing. And apparently, not apparently, it was having some mechanical issues, but it was running, which is awesome. So I'm like, yep, we're doing this. Off the swim starts. Well, right off the bat in the first hour, we had kayakers from other swimmers coming over to our boat saying, could you please move that boat away from the other swimmers? It's making them sick. It's smoking so badly. Fortunately, boat fumes don't bother me. So I was a happy wee clam until the boat broke down, and then there was no longer a boat, and I'd been trained to continue swimming, which I did with my kayaker. Nothing's going to stop me now. Off I went with my kayaker under the Brooklyn Bridge. Brilliant, by the way. Love that. Heading up the East River, and still got a great kayaker by me. I've got limited feeds, but you know, it's 30 minutes by 30 minutes. Next thing I know, there's a big Aussie flag in front of me in a boat, and the race director had called everyone in a certain area, which included me, to get in the boat. And I'm like, oh, I'm feeling good. I've just come off a big DNF. No. So I got on the boat, and I'm like, okay, well, Ned had told me that there's a possibility going around Manhattan of thunderstorms. And if you get pulled into a boat, you've got to get yourself down into the cabin. So I came into the boat. It's not my boat. I've got no clothes, apart from my bathing suit. I've got no feed. The water was cold for me, and my body temperature plummets. And I'm now a popsicle on a boat without my crew. So I look around, and I ask a friend if they have anything, and they had a emergency blanket, super nice. It felt pretty thin, so I'm still shaking, and I asked the captain if I could go downstairs into the cabin, and down I went out of the wind with my wee shaky blanket. I must have looked pretty bad, because people came down and said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine." And I guess I was told that the white skin, the sunken red eyes, but I'm like, no, I always look like this, really. So time goes by, and we get the clearance to get back in the water. And fortunately, the boat that I was on agreed to let me swim off with them. And the uplifting thing was my resourceful crew found an NYPD boat who got me my feeds. They showed up on a new boat, and they came up alongside me, and I was able to get in and continue into the Harlem River, which was brilliant. So I'm swimming along, and you know the song, "Nothing Don't Stop Me Now," swimming away, and I'm like, something is like in my face the whole time I'm swimming. Every time I would turn to breathe, I'd have something like going in my mouth. I kept trying to flick this thing off. I tried to flick it with my hand. And when I would come into feed off the boat, my crew would just look horrified at me. And I'm like, I must be looking pretty bad. They must be going to pull me or something. But they let me keep on swimming. Well, it wasn't towards the end of the swim when I saw some footage. I found out that I had a used condom attached to my swim goggle strap. And every time I rolled to breathe, that, yes. So challenges. So anyway, I finished the swim. It wasn't an official swim because it was assisted, because I had a boat assistant there. So that was my second Triple Crown of Nearlies. And fortunately, I was booked for Catalina just 3 or 4 months later. So not to be deterred, on went the training, and I got myself ready to go. And I headed out for a Catalina swim in September of 2013 with 2 epic DNFs under my belt. I went in for my 3rd swim to give it my all. And I got everything set into place that I could control. And of course, part of the appeal of marathon swimming is it's not a done deal. You don't control anything. You roll with the punches, you adjust, and you do what you can. You just put your heart and soul into it. And that's how I was going to go on to Catalina. So I was on Outrider, beautiful boat, lovely. I'd heard the stories from Ned about them cooking bacon and eggs and all sorts of lovely things, so I was pretty excited. I went from Catalina Island to the mainland. The boat crew were incredible. They gave me the instructions out there. You're going to get off the boat. You're going to swim into the island. You're going to clear the shore. And then you're going to start your swim. So I slid off the boat. And as I slid in, I heard someone yell, you know, watch out for the kelp. Don't cut yourself on the way in. There's a lane line or a barrier to swim under or over. So, and I felt super strong and powered. swam towards the shore, under the little rope, felt the kelp, and I'm like, what was that about? Don't get cut. And then bam, I smacked my knee on a rock, and I'm like, oh dear. Anyway, we're going anyway. And the horn sounds and it's time to start. So off I go. I was really excited. Felt strong in the water. I had a crew member in a kayak, Cynthia Needham, paddling along. She was in a full wetsuit, and we made a lovely strong start. We were within the first hour. We had some good sized swells going, but nothing out of control. I was getting into my mindful place of my breath, having long, strong strokes. And then I felt a massive impact hit me on my right side. And it felt like I'd been smacked by a giant log with nails protruding out of it, but I didn't know what it was. It abruptly shifted my whole body. And essentially the PG version is I went, what the heck was that? And my mind just couldn't make sense of it. And I kept stroking. A couple of things. I came to finish the swim, and I didn't want to get in that boat. Nothing was going to get me in that boat. But I still
It wasn't a piling from Atlantic City.
That was definitely not a piling.
Okay, just checking.
No. So, but I thought my brain, it's amazing how your brain goes to things that you can explain or identify with. So, first of all, when I'm thinking this, it hurt like hell. It's just this, it went from the impact to this just throb from the hit down. And I was like, what the hell was that? I'm like, okay, right, look, I could have just swum into a tree. I'm like, what the heck are you thinking? You're in you're in deep water. There's no tree that's coming at you from that angle. So I'm like, all right, look, Cynthia could be anywhere in that kayak, and she's hit me on purpose with that paddle before, because sometimes I'm just a little toad. And I look over, and she's quite off to my right, like not her. I'm like, well, I must have run into the boat. And then I take a breath to my left, the boat's way away. And so then I'm like, you know what? Sometimes things get really big in the water, like enlarged. It could be a mutant jellyfish with this crazy sting. And I decided I'm going to settle on that and I'll just deal with it later. So I kept swimming, and I focused my mind on three things that didn't hurt. One was my earlobes. The other was my ponytail, no pain out of there. And my shoulders felt good. So I kept swimming. And then one of the big things people have said to me is, well, why didn't you stop? Well, I got to be honest with you. I really didn't want to stick around to meet whatever had hit me. I was interested in moving forwards. Happily married, wasn't looking to meet anyone out there. I am onwards. So our time came, and it came time for my first feed, and things got a wee bit chaotic. My support kayaker rolled, and my whole focus and the boat's focus was getting her in the water. And I'm like, okay, kayak is done, boat's not moving. And I went to the things that I've been trained to do, and that was swim around the boat. So I swam up and down alongside the boat until the kayaker was pulled into the water and the boat was able to continue on. And all in my mind I was thinking was not getting in, not stopping, not quitting, not getting in. And I had two observers on the boat, that they were great. And one of them said, just keep swimming, and I did. And from there, it just went on to surviving the swim. And I went on to swim for another 11 hours, and was about a mile out from the Californian coast. And for me, when I start getting hypothermic, I don't do a lot of, well, I do the usual signs, but I don't really shake and shiver in the water. I lose power. And I'm pretty good at faking my stroke rate as best I can to make it look like I'm sustaining things pretty well, but I actually don't go very far. And the observers pulled me in and put me through the questions, which I answered pretty well in my mind, but I was a done burger. I was toasted, and they called it, and I got in the boat. And at that point, I wasn't thinking about whatever had hit me. I was like, I've just had 3 DNFs in a row, and I've just done the Triple Crown of Nearlies. And then I'm kind of wired to also make sure other people are doing well. So then I was like, hold on, I bought maple snacks for the crew and little treats, and how are you doing? And so we motored into the shore, and I'm not going to lie, it's pretty down. I was heartbroken. You know, heart and soul into that 2 or 3 years. And what I didn't realize was I walked away with so much, not swim completions, but incredible growth as a human and as a swimmer. And it set me up for some great swims of the future. I didn't know that at the time. But we got to the shore. I think the captain felt really bad for me, actually, because he came up, put his hand on my shoulder, and he's like, you know, there'll be other swims, and I was kind of hanging my head. We got the boat unloaded, and 2 crew members are in the front of the car. I'm in the back, and at this point, I'm past feeling down. I'm actually just feeling nauseous because I've taken in a bit of sea work. I'm a bit of a frapper after a swim. I kind of purge that salt water out. So I'm kind of not feeling so great. So we get in the car, and we've got about a 40-minute drive back to Manhattan Beach. Beautiful spot, great cupcakes and ice creams if you ever go there. So we're driving in the back of the car. I'm starting to not feel quite as nauseous. My whole body hurts. Everything aches. And I'm like, you know, I mean, I know you get in pain after a marathon swim, but this was particularly bad. And I just kind of can't get comfortable. I'm pushing around in the seat. And I've got sweatpants on. My suit's been ripped off on the boat. So I've got sweatpants and a t-shirt. And as I'm kind of sort of struggling to adjust, my sweatpants slide down sort of a little bit. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I sort of look down, and I can see these puncture marks, these teeth marks in my side. And I sort of lean forward between the seats to the girls, and I'm like, hey, I think I've got like holes in me. And they're like, Charlotte, you know, you've had hypothermia, you've been up 30 hours, you're out of it. Just settle down in the back seat. Yeah, I'm sure they've had enough of me. You know, I've been in their ear this whole time. So I'm like, no, seriously, it looks really weird. And then I went, hold on, something's sticking out of one of the little holes. And they're like looking at me like I'm bonkers. So I put my wee hand down, and it's this little, I'm like, does that look like a tooth to you? And then we all just crack up laughing, and they're like, I think your eyes are a bit gone from, you know, the salt water. And then they turn around and look at it, and we all roar with laughter. We're like, yeah, we think that's a tooth. So we're sort of giggling away. They actually stop and get me some Gatorade to boost my electrolytes because I think I'm losing it. And then we get back to the little beach house we're staying, and they're like, look, you know, first of all, you smell. And next of all, you know, got to go clean up. So I go on. I was right in the early time of my marathoning swimming career. I was given a nice little grease rag, which I still carry around to rub all my grease and dirt off. So I'm rubbing away. Well, I get out of the shower. I've got a towel wrapped around me. I come out and I go, do you think that looks like a mouth mark on my side? And there was this bite mark from this fish. So again, we laugh, and I kind of sort of shrug it off and go to bed. And then the next morning we sort of get up and walk down to the Manhattan Marina and talk to one of the marine biologists and say, look, this came out of my hip. I was out here. what do you think this looks like? And she said, well, you know, it looks like about a 5 to 6 foot shark by the shape of it. Did you get a look at it? And I said, well, you know, it was pitch black. We didn't switch emails or phone numbers or anything, and so that was kind of it. And I really, you know, I didn't at the time think it was a big deal. It was sort of more after we got home, really, that people kind of started sort of asking a little bit. It hurt for a couple of weeks as far as the impact from it. And, you know, it healed up. It was essentially just puncture marks, top and bottom. So, you know, the lucky thing for me was that I made it out of the water.
But you're not wearing a shark tooth necklace right now.
No shark tooth necklace, no.
So after 3 did not finishes in the Triple Crown,
yeah,
and you're a brilliant swimmer, and you win the Kingdom, and you win Atlantic City, I presume at that point, just, you know, park the Triple Crown and go for some other challenges. Or your other option was dust yourself off, which is probably going to take a little bit of while. We don't have a lot of time left, Charlotte, but let's suffice to say that you went back and conquered Manhattan.
yes.
And
then 12 months later, actually, Steve asked me one of the more memorable swims. I think it might have had to been going back to Manhattan 1 year later, swimming that swim again in that very spot where I'd had a little kiss from a fish, and sitting on the swimmer's platform of the same boat. And I tell you, I remember the boat crew, I could hear them behind me. I don't think she's going to get in. She's sitting there quite a long time. And I tell you, mental strength, I slid in that water and I swam that thing to the finish, and it felt amazing.
And then Catalina?
That was Catalina. Manhattan, yes. Manhattan, fantastic. The only challenge from that was coming into the finish. There was part of a couch floating down the East River with me when I was trying to cut into the inlet, and one of the finish officials was barking at me to not use assistance, and I'm like, dude, it's a couch. I'm trying to get it out of my way. Yes. So, yes, and the English Channel is unfinished business. Remains to be seen. But
So I want to thank you very much for your time, Charlotte. And one of the things that is fabulous about Manhattan, which you'll smile about, is when the plane went down in the Hudson and Captain Sullenberg was a national hero. Charlotte, you got to say, yeah, I know that spot. Been there before. It's good water right there.
Yeah. Well, I got one thing to let folks know, because not everyone talks about failure, but look, let me tell you that difficulty strengthens your mind, like workouts strengthen your body. Don't fear them. So it's not a DNF, it's a DNFF. Do not feel failure. It doesn't mean train for it. Just put your heart and soul into it, and you'll always enjoy it, even if it might take a little while afterwards.
Thank you very much, Charlotte.
Yeah.
We're going to stop recording now.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere.